Which cleaning franchise should you buy? I'm here to give you the raw truth, the real numbers, so you can make a decision for yourself on what the best franchise is for you. Now, here's the awkward part. My name's Neel. I run MaidThis, which is one of the franchise systems I'm going to be comparing here today. So, full disclosure, total conflict of interest. Here's the thing. I'm not here to try to sell you just my franchise. In fact, a lot of the people who've inquired about MaidThis, I've referred them to these other franchisees just because I think it's a better fit for them for that type of franchise system. My worst case scenario is you joining and then deciding, hey, I spent $150,000 and this is the worst option for me. So what I'm going to do today is break down the top 4 cleaning franchises and tell you exactly who I think each of them is good for and which one should you consider. So first, let's go over the landscape of who's even in the cleaning franchise space. And I kind of divide this between the old guard and the new guard. Now, recently I was reading Entrepreneur Magazine, and it had a section on franchising. That's what this whole magazine's about, for the franchise edition for the year. And I was going through the list of residential cleaning franchises. I'm literally going to read you the list here of who is ranked right now by Entrepreneur Magazine. By the way, MaidThis is ranked, so, no big deal. So the top ones here would be the Maids, Molly Maid, the Cleaning Authority, 2 Maids, Mary Maids, MaidThis Cleaning, and Maid Pro. That's a list who are on the franchise 500 from Entrepreneur Magazine right now. So going through this list, the crazy part is most of these were started in the 1970s. The newest franchise besides MaidThis was 2 Maids, and they started in the year 2003. So it's been almost 20 years since they actually started. Now, in the franchise world, there's 3 major players I want to talk about who are in the old guard, as I call them, big household names that you're going to know. Now, I'm going to go through them and break them down exactly. It's Molly Maids, Mary Maids, and the Cleaning Authority. So for each of these, I'm literally going to read what's in the data from Entrepreneur Magazine just to give some background on these companies and who they are. Molly Maids was founded in 1979. They currently have 456 locations. They're currently owned by the group KKR BlackRock. So they got acquired by private equity a while ago, and they're part of Neighborly, which is a big franchise brand conglomerate. Next up on the list is Mary Maids. So Mary Maids has 1,500 locations, 1,556 locations as of 2025, which is crazy. They've been around since 1979. That's when they started. And they're currently owned by Rourke Capital, which is another large conglomerate private equity who bought Mary Maids a while ago. The other big name in the industry is the Cleaning Authority. The Cleaning Authority has been around since 1977. They currently have 245 locations, and they're currently owned by Authority Brands, which is kind of like Neighborly, one of these big private equity companies who bought them. Now, I mentioned that these are all private equity owned. For one reason is that the founders are no longer there, right? These companies sold a long time ago and they're now owned by private equity. Now, I want to be fair here. Being owned by private equity is not a bad thing. In fact, I used to work in private equity, so I understand the motivations of a lot of private equity owners. The main thing is that you get name brand recognition, all these kinds of things from these long-term stable brands. But private equity does have different motivations, which is returning capital to its investors. That's the primary motivation of private equity funds. Most of these businesses don't have the founders involved at all, right? It's run by a board, it's run by maybe a placed CEO, someone else who just works for the private equity shop, whose main goal is simply one thing: return money for the owners and the investors. Now, there's the new guard that I would say that come from the list of franchisees. The new guard would be, number 1 would be MaidThis franchise. That's the company I own. I started my own LA location in 2013. We started franchising around 2020. We have about 40 franchise locations right now. Very different model, and I'll explain how later, but founder owned. I'm the founder, and we're still building the team. We're in what's called the emerging phase of franchise world, which is any brand which is under 50 units is called an emerging brand. So another brand I would also put in the new guard would probably be a company called 2 Maids and a Mop. So 2 Maids. 2 Maids was founded in 2003, so they've been around a little bit longer. I think they have about 160 franchises, I want to say now. They were recently bought a couple years ago by private equity, so they are private equity owned now as well. So this is kind of the landscape right now. You have the old guard, the incumbents, and then you have the new age guys, the new people, the new kids on the block in the background. Now, as you're evaluating these brands, I think you got to know about the cost and upfront investments for you to be thinking about. So I'm literally going to go through what it costs for each of these brands to own. So I'm reading this from Entrepreneur Magazine straight up. This is the data from item 7, item 19 of the FDD. So we're going to go through Molly Maid first. Molly Maid, their initial investment or recommended investment up front is $140,000 to $197,000. And the royalty ranges between 3 to 6.5%. You also have to have a office space and lease as well. We have the Cleaning Authority next. Cleaning Authority investment ranges between $80,000 and $147,000. You also need to have an office space available. And we have Maid's. Maid's investment range is 130 to 170,000, and it's not home office space, so you do need an office and that as well. And the royalty is about 7%. One thing I do want to note, Maid specifically, from what I know, charges a territory fee, which is about $1 per household. So you pay an initial fee and then you pay an additional $1 per household of what you're buying. That's a little bit unique. I've not heard that of the other two as far as I know. MaidThis, in comparison, our investment range is 60 to 80,000 with a 6% royalty. And we are home office space, meaning you don't need a vehicle, wraps, equipment, expensive office, and things like that. Now you might be asking, why is there $100,000 difference between MaidThis versus some of the old guard? And the answer is simply this: bricks and tires. A lot of the old guard were created in a time where you needed an office space to go to, right? So they require office leases. They require you to get supplies. They require you to get a fleet of vehicles. This is all baked into the startup cost, which is why it costs so much more for a lot of these startup capital for the old guard. I'll be honest, some people want that. Some people love that. If you're a new entrepreneur and you're like, hey, I want to go to an office. I want a lease. I want all my employees to be in one place, I think that's fantastic. I think for a lot of people, it really helps out operations. At MaidThis, we've deleted those startup costs from the equation of this model entirely. I think back in the day, people had to do this because technology didn't exist. You needed people to show up at an office to get their schedule for the day. You needed to get people into a car together to drive to the location. In this day and age, I simply just don't believe that's needed with technology. You could have cleaners get their schedules at their home, go straight from their home to the job site. You don't need an office space for lease. Cleaners could provide their own supplies and you could reimburse them for them if you want. You can have global talent manage local operations as well, which is something we're doing as well. So you just don't need a lot of this old school overhead. But the thing is, a lot of these brands which started in the 1970s, that's how they were created, and that's how they think the model works, and that's how the models work for them. They're doing it successfully. This is no diss on them. It's just a very different way of operating a business. The biggest difference, the biggest thing I think you should consider is, do you want an office space or not? Do you want a lease? Do you want car fleets? Or do you want to run very lean? For some people, they want that kind of stuff because that's what they want as a business owner, and that's totally okay. But I think that's the biggest difference when it comes to startup costs. MaidThis is about half the cost in terms of initial startup fee because it doesn't require you to have all this build out. Now, who are these franchise systems built for? And I think this is the part where a lot of prospects don't think about this well. But the most important question to ask isn't what is the best brand? The most important question to ask is what is the best brand for you and your situation? The big three, in my opinion, were built for a type of avatar called the old school industrialist. Now, imagine back in the day you had someone who came from corporate. You know, they've been there for 20 years, they want out, they work in an office, they're middle management, and they want out and they want to manage another business themselves. They really want that security blanket. They really want to dive in and kind of replicate their job, but into a business. Many times these kind of older school brands are geared towards that type of person. These people want to physically go to an office every day. They want to see their team members every day. They want to go and do their morning commute to the office. That's what this person is used to, and that's what they want to do. And honestly, I think that's a real business. There's nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, for a lot of these older school brands, like I talked about, you get a lot of name recognition from these brands anyway, which I think is incredibly valuable. Structurally, in my opinion, I think this is like a 1970s management job, right? That's how I view a lot of these brands and their avatars. Now, I don't know this for a fact. I don't know who their avatars are. If I was going to guess, in terms of Maids, Maids, and the Cleaning Authority, I think their probably average age is around 45 to 60. Someone who came from the corporate world, someone who wants to maybe manage the manager, someone who wants to buy assets for their portfolio, someone who wants to go into the office every day and run the business. These might be the types of people who get involved with these brands. All that's fine. All that's great. Many times that's the exact avatar we have at MaidThis, but a slight different nuance. MaidThis was built for the tech native entrepreneur. That entrepreneur who was born in the cloud, who was used to having a smartphone and remote talent. That's the world we live in right now, and that's who this franchise is built for. Typically, the ideal MaidThis franchise is more of a first-time entrepreneur. Maybe they've had other small entrepreneurial endeavors, but they never built a larger $1 million business, and this is their first real foray into business. They want to get into entrepreneurship with the support system as well to de-risk things. This person's typically going to be a little bit more entrepreneurial, right? MaidThis is an emerging brand, meaning franchise support is there, but franchisees also have the leeway to provide some more of that entrepreneurial energy. Now, typically how I think about people who want to be MaidThis franchisees is they pass what I call the MOP test. The MOP test is, if I went to Italy for a month, would my business survive without me? Typically in any business, it's hard to do that in the first year. But over time, the goal of MaidThis franchise is they want location freedom. They don't want to have to go to an office every day and manage the fleet of vehicles. They want that laptop lifestyle at some point in the process. Maybe not at the beginning, but at some point. That's passing the mob test. That's typically who's the ideal franchisee for a MaidThis location. The next big difference between the three incumbents as well as MaidThis would be the end customer they service. Now, for all our residential cleaning franchises, it's mostly servicing residential homes. That means mostly trying to get monthly, bi-weekly, and weekly customers. Molly Maids, I believe in their FDD, boast about an 87% or 90% customer retention rate, which is fantastic, by the way. I think that's amazing for the industry. So the whole goal in the residential industry is to get recurring customers on repeat and grow from there. Typically, the Cleaning Authority, Molly Maids, and Mary Maids all focus predominantly on residential. They also do some commercial light. Commercial light is typically buildings under 5,000 square feet. I don't know for a fact, maybe they also do commercial, general commercial, but from what I understand and from what the FDD says, it's mostly largely residential, let's say 80%, and then some small commercial business from that. MaidThis is very similar. Why? Because I think the residential industry is fantastic, right? People need their home cleaned on repeat constantly. So large portion of the revenue for franchisees is on residential. It's also on commercial light, small businesses, office, apartment complexes. One thing that MaidThis does differently, which again is adapted for the new era, is doing a lot of vacation rental and Airbnbs. So the MaidThis software that we use could actually hook into Airbnb and the calendar of hosts. Anytime there's a guest checkout with one of the hosts who signed up with us, it can automatically schedule cleaning with us and continue to schedule all future cleanings, which makes things incredibly sticky. Now, Airbnb, I think, came around in 2013. So they came around after a lot of these companies were already up and running, have sold. They're used to residential and commercial. That's all they've done. We started post the Airbnb boom. The cool part about Airbnbs is they turn over a lot more than regular residential units, right? A regular home, maybe you clean it monthly or bi-weekly or even weekly. Airbnbs, a single home could turn over 8 to 10 times a month, right? It depends on the home. So that's the third segment that we service, which adds to a lot of what our franchisees do. And some franchisees get the vast majority, 80% of the revenue, purely from Airbnbs and vacation rentals. All right, next let's talk about the innovation gap and the AI gap and what I see happening in the market. Here's what I think the big three, as I'll call them, the incumbents, are really good at. They have a lot of infrastructure built out. They have call centers largely, so you could pay and then someone else will answer your calls for you. They have the existing playbooks. They have data from other franchisees. I think there's huge value to having a brand name recognition and like the infrastructure in the back end, if that's what you want. I had a franchise prospect recently who wanted all of that. He said, hey, I just kind of want to plug and play. I want to buy this. I want to manage it as a portfolio investor. I eventually want to put a manager into place really quickly. I want a call center. I referred him. I said, I think you should talk to one of these guys. Like, that's just not the type of avatar we're going after. That's not what we offer. Please go talk to these guys because I think they're the perfect fit for what you're looking for. I think they're good at that type of person who is willing to pay up for that level of service and wants to buy either like an asset or a job in certain cases. I think they're fantastic for that type of person. Now, in this new day and age, the AI era, I think there's a massive gap happening in the industry. And I think that's where innovation really matters. And that gap is what I'm seeing as the big play and what we're actually doubling down on right now at MaidThis. When you have 1,000+ locations and you want to make changes, it's like moving an oil tanker. It's very slow. That's why a lot of big Fortune 500 companies take a long time to implement technology because there's so many layers to get to and there's so many things to change in the system. Now, when you have old software systems that work from a while ago, they still produce money, they still work. But when you have something fast moving like AI coming into place and you need to be innovative and quick, it's really hard if you're controlling an oil tanker, right? And a lot of old school companies operate this way, which is it's hard to make changes because of how big the system is. These companies, they're not ignoring tech. I think they're doing a fantastic job with tech. It's just that they were built in an era where the tech was different. And for anyone to change tech midstream is really difficult. MaidThis, on the flip side, is built purely on AI efficiency. We started with the motto being, we are an innovative company to start with. We are a customer service focused company to start with. And we happen to just do cleaning, right? That's the main focus of what MaidThis is. What that means is we're really leaning into everything AI and implementing it really fast. For example, there's AI recruiting agents we're starting to roll out. There's AI receptionists. A call gets missed, it goes to the AI receptionist. There's AI chatbots. All these types of things, I do think a lot of the big franchise companies will roll out because there's really sharp people running them. But it might take them a long time to roll out because they have 1,000 units. It's just hard to roll out these tech changes rapidly. That's why I think being smaller and agile at the moment is a huge advantage just because of how fast things are moving with technology and AI. The small companies are going to be able to leapfrog a lot faster with all the changes happening in the market. The big three are learning tech. We are tech. And I think that advantage is going to compound over the next few years. Now, the big question that we finally get to is which of these is right for you. Now, clearly I'm biased, but I realize that MaidThis is not the right fit for everyone. So here's things I think you should consider when you're figuring out which of these franchises to buy. Number one, do you want the prestige and name recognition? If so, I think the big three would probably be a good fit for what you're looking for if that's the main value. Do you want a physical office and a local team? Do you want that feel of going to a location every morning, having your cleaners show up, having a fleet of vehicles, having that like quote unquote real business feel? Some people really want that. If so, I think some of these incumbents would be a better fit for you. If you're very attracted by the idea of being an old school industrialist or a local industrialist and you have $150,000 to $200,000 to spend on your initial capital, this might be a good fit for you for the older guys. If you're okay with the limited territories, because one thing I didn't mention is a lot of the franchises which are really large, a lot of the territories are already sold out, right? Meaning you're probably buying resales, or maybe if you're in a smaller market, it doesn't matter and that territory is available, but you have to be okay with buying an existing location for a lot of these companies already. I would say if you want to evaluate MaidThis, typically you're looking at something which is going to be lower cost. You're a tech native entrepreneur. You like being an entrepreneur, you like figuring things out, but with the guardrails of a real support system as well. This might be your real first time into entrepreneurship and you want the guardrails and support system and everything that is offered by a franchise system, but still have the freedom to kind of do some of your own thing. If you want to eventually run your empire from a laptop, pass the mob test, run your business from Italy for a month, that would be the ideal person who buys into a MaidThis franchise, someone who's willing to put the time and effort in at the beginning to reap the rewards of lifestyle freedom later. Now, everything I mentioned in here in the Entrepreneur Magazine is public record. It's all in the FDDs of each of these locations. Feel free to check them out. One thing I do want to say is I think different brands are good for different types of people. I've referred many people to each of the three brands I talked about. Obviously, like I said, hey, I'm biased because I created MaidThis and I like the way we're doing things. So it totally depends on you and what you're looking for. But if you're interested and even slightly curious, check out the link below in the description to inquire about MaidThis franchise. Hop on a call with the team. There is no heavy sales pitch. There's no aggressive follow-up. It's just saying, hey, is this a fit for you or not? And if it's not, we will redirect you to what actually is the good fit for you. So thanks so much for watching and good luck on your hunting.